Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Assembly Judiciary here in Carson City, as well as anyone in Las Vegas, and of course, anyone viewing online. Committee Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Assembly members Cole, here. Dahlia, here. Gonzalez, here. Gray, Hanson, here. Hardy, here. LaRue Hatch, here. Marzola, present. Moore, here. Nadeem, present. Orentlicker, Roth, here. Urick, here. Chair Miller.
Here. And please mark Assembly Member Orentlicker present when he arrives and Assembly Member Gray absent excused. And with that, just a few reminders before we get started. Please make sure you turn off the volume on all your electric devices. I ask that anyone making public comment or testimony today on any bill keep their comments to 2 minutes. For anyone presenting a bill, please keep your bill presentation to 15 minutes. Also, for everyone, the first time you speak, please remember to state your name and spell it the first time so that we have it for the record. We actually ask that you say your name before each time you speak if there's multiple speakers so that everyone can identify in the minutes which person is speaking. For those wishing to call in for public testimony or for public testimony on a bill or public comment today, the phone number is 1-888-475-4499, and today's meeting ID is 833-2496-3298, and that is also listed on the agenda that you can find on Nellis today. With that, before we get started, we do have a BDR introduction. So members, our BDR today is BDR 13869, and it's relating to guardianship, revising provisions relating to certain notices, petitions, and citations for guardianship specifically of minors, revises appointment modification, removal, or termination of guardianship of minors, the powers and duties of guardians of minors, and the management of estate, property, and other assets of protected minors. So again, with this, it is not, our vote today is not showing any type of support for the bill. It's just enabling us to turn the BDR into a bill. So members, any questions before we vote? Okay, I will take a motion. I have a motion from Vice Chair Marzola and a second from Member Delia. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And the motion passes. With that, we will go on to our first bill on the agenda today, which is Assembly Bill 299. Assembly Bill 299 revises provisions relating to prostitution. So we will give our bill sponsor and her co-presenters a few moments to get settled. And then, of course, whenever you are ready, please begin.
Thank you, Chair Miller and members of the committee. I'm Elaine Marzola, and I represent Assembly District 21 in Clark County. Today, I am here to present Assembly Bill 299, which revises the provisions concerning customers, also sometimes referred to as Johns, who unlawfully engage in prostitution or solicitation of prostitution. Joining me today at the witness table is Reagan Comis with R&R Partners and District Attorney Tyson League. Also on Zoom with us today is Christina Rangel. She's a survivor. She is on Zoom. Just to give you a little bit of background on this bill, 2 sessions ago, we revised the Nevada law to separate provisions applicable to prostitutes and to their customers into 2 distinct sections of the Nevada revised statute. Last session, in 2023, I introduced the same legislation as I am introducing today. It was Assembly Bill 145, which received unanimous support in both this committee and the Assembly as a whole. Despite the legislature's continued focus on these issues, Nevada remains a hub for human trafficking, sex trafficking, and illegal prostitution. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department reported a nearly 50% increase in offenses across its jurisdiction from May 3rd, 2023 to May 3rd, 2024. While Nevada law addresses both prostitutes and their customers, it's clear that enforcement has disproportionately focused on those who are being exploited rather than those who are driving the demand. Assembly Bill 299 is intended to shift that balance to increase accountability for the customers who fuel the illegal prostitution industry by increasing penalties, mandating arrests, and adjusting record-sealing provisions. This bill sends a clear message that purchasing sexual services is not a victimless crime and that those who engage in such activities will be held responsible for their actions. Chair Miller, with your permission, I would like to pass the presentation over to Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and forgive my voice, I'm getting over a cold. Reagan Comis with R&R Partners here today representing Exquisite.
Would you please spell your name, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, REGANCOMIS. Sexual exploitation and sex trafficking are complex problems with many causes, but the key driver is sex buyers. Without their money, pimps and traffickers have no incentive to force vulnerable women and men, girls and boys into the illegal sex trade. Nevada is facing a crisis. We ranked second in the nation for human trafficking according to a World Population Review report. Research in 2018 found that at least 5,016 individuals were sold for sex in an average month in Nevada. What's important is that this figure excludes those who provide sex in licensed brothels. Buyers of sex, or Johns, are almost exclusively men from all races and ethnicities and socioeconomic standing. Buyers who have participated in research on the illegal sex trade provided the following reasons for why they purchase sex. Quote, anything you cannot get from your girlfriend or wife, you can get from a prostitute. I want to pay someone to do something a normal person would not do. And finally, being with a prostitute is like having a cup of coffee. Once you are done with it, you throw it out, end quote. A survivor who asked to remain anonymous shared their experiences of Johns as follows, quote, I had Johns, many of them, who asked, what do you cost? Admitting with that question that they weren't just buying sex. They were buying a woman. I had Johns who grinned at me in a revolting way when they saw that I was in pain. My first John was like that. I had Johns who brought drugs with them so they could use them with me. I had Johns who loved to violate my boundaries and go beyond what was agreed. Some were totally aware that I wasn't consenting, but continued in spite of it. You can't avoid a feeling that it's not about sex, but about tormenting and torturing someone. Again and again, you see questions asking how resilient the woman is, which is code for saying, how much can she take and still keep quiet, end quote. Buyers have stated that they are most concerned about their own personal safety, sexual health, and freedom from arrest. In the 2018 report, Who Buys Sex? Understanding and Disrupting Illicit Market Demand, both current and former buyers stated that if the risk of arrests and increased penalties, they would consider or altogether stop purchasing illicit sex in the future. Another study found that 763 buyers found that 87% of participants stated that should their photo or name be published in the paper, it would be a deterrent. In the same study, 79% said the risk of their families or employers finding out that they were arrested for solicitation would cause them to stop this behavior. What is important to understand is the way that law currently works right now. If a buyer is caught for solicitation on their first offense, it is very similar to a traffic ticket. They get a citation, they pay their $400, and then they seal their record in 1 year. Our goal with this legislation is to reduce demand and thus help solve the problem of sex trafficking in our state. Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I may now, Chair, ask Ms. Christina Rangel. Thank you.
Hello, yes, my name is Christina Rangel, Christina, last name Rangel, and I am testifying in support of AB 299 today. Start with my speech. My name is Christina Rangel, and I am in support of this very important and essential legislation to reduce the demand, which is the very driver of sex trafficking in the state of Nevada. I myself was born and raised in Carson City, Nevada. My grandparents owned the Ormsby House, so I basically grew up in the casinos. My grandma worked at the Nevada State Legislature as a secretary for 30 years, and my mom was a clerk to the Carson City Court. I moved to Las Vegas as a young single mother looking for job opportunities and to be closer to my dad. Unfortunately, I met a man that was nice and kind and recognized my vulnerabilities of being completely naive of the insatiable demand for young girls to buy for sex in Las Vegas. While I thought I was dating him for a few months, he was investigating my life. To make a very long and tragic story short, I was sex trafficked in Las Vegas for a year and 3 months. I didn't even know what sex trafficking was until it was happening to me. Prior to my trafficker forcing me into prostitution in the Las Vegas casinos through abuse and threats, my trafficker had previous contact with hundreds of local sex buyers. He had lists of men that lived in Las Vegas that he could contact and let them know that he had, and I quote, fresh new meat walking in the casino floors. While some of the buyers were tourists, nearly all of them knew what they were doing was illegal. Almost 100% of the tourist buyers that bought me as a victim in the Las Vegas casinos would ask me questions to try to prove that I wasn't some undercover police officer. While Vice, Metro, and undercover officers were in the casinos and on the Las Vegas Strip arresting me and countless other victims of prostitution and sex trafficking, the majority of the local buyers roaming the casinos looking to purchase me were not even considered by law enforcement. As it stands, the consequences for this crime, buying sex, is nearly a parking ticket, and the consequences must be increased. For the past 17 years, I have worked in 9 countries fighting sex trafficking in many different forms. I have my bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley and my master's in international law from the University of Oxford, England. But it is right here in Nevada I had my most shocking encounter with a buyer while advocating for victims of prostitution and sex trafficking. On a reverse sting in Reno, Nevada, the buyer laughed at the police and then asked if he could just pay the fine on the spot to not deal with the, quote, hassle of mailing it in. He was then caught 2 more times that same night attempting to purchase sex from a young 18-year-old during the same operation. The way to end sex trafficking is to increase the penalties for buyers and to reduce the demand. It is an economic system. The dollars buyers spent in the sex trade in Nevada do not stay in the sex trade. They are funding other types of violence and crime. It is imperative for the future of all Nevadans, for tourists visiting our state, and for future generations of children in Nevada like I once was, that Nevada finally take a stand and look at this issue for what it is. We must reduce the demand for sex trafficking and approve increased penalties for sex buyers. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to who goes next.
Good morning, Tyson League, TYSONLEAGUE. I would like to lend my support to this bill because primarily of the arrest issue. So many times when we see people that face consequences for purchasing sex, again, this is a demand reduction measure. This is something that goes to reducing the demand and changing the economic balance for something that is an exceptionally traumatizing and damaging portion of our community. But so many times we see people that are cited, not arrested. What I think people don't understand is that that largely is not entered into your criminal history, your NCIC. If you're not booked, if you're not processed, that record doesn't follow you. So if someone is, say, booked in or cited in Las Vegas, the chances of someone in Reno finding out about that with that not following them on their criminal history is very limited. This follows the person, allows it to be attached to their criminal history, and allows for these increased penalties to take effect if people are repeat offenders. It allows people in district attorney's offices to see that people have been convicted and prosecuted for this previously. So many times, courts are not entering these into individuals' criminal histories, so we're not knowing. Again, I have had the duty, I would say, of prosecuting a number of offenses involving trafficking. Identifying the trafficking victims, identifying the traffickers is very difficult. Identifying the Johns is very easy. This is a very easy way of attaching a real consequence and taking this matter and taking action on something that is so damaging to the human condition. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll just briefly go through the bill. It is short, so I can do this very quickly, and hopefully we can meet our 15-minute time frame. In Section 1, Sub 1, you'll see where it requires the arrest, that language that requires as opposed to the citation. And then you'll see below that for the first offense, it increases the fine from $400 to $800, as well as the civil penalty from $200 to $600. And then skipping ahead to, still in Section 1 now, Sub 8, it requires the sealing to be 2 years and for the person to be petitioning for that sealing. And that's the entirety of the bill, Madam Chair, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Chair, Elaine Marzola for the record. If I can just have one last bit of information to the committee before we take questions, just to put some numbers in perspective of how much this has increased just in the Las Vegas area in 1 year from 23 to 24. In Spring Valley area, there was a 234% increase in solicitation. Downtown area, 81.1%. In the convention center area, 21.7%. These are real concrete numbers that were provided to me by LCB. Thank you for hearing this bill, and now we'll stand for questions.
Thank you so much for that. And just so people understand, Spring Valley is not a resort area. It's not a downtown area. It's actually a fully residential area. It butts up against my district, but it's houses and shops and schools and hospitals. There's nothing touristy about that area. With that, I would first like to get just for some context. Christine? Thank you. First, you know, we are all grieving for the victimization that you experienced, but appreciate all of your work and advocacy to fight for other people that are in that situation. Could you just, when you spoke about the John, it's basically like everyone said like a citation, like a ticket. It reminds me of something as severe as when I was in college, and I won't say we, but because I didn't, but we, as in youth, would get an MIP, minor in possession. If you were caught at a party, you had alcohol, you got a ticket, you paid it, and you moved on with your life. And that's what seems to be happening here. But when you said that you or other victims were arrested, could you tell us during your time of victimization what it looked like when a victim would be arrested? What did it look like in the criminal justice system for those individuals as opposed to the buyer or the John?
Yeah, so for me, I can give you a concrete example. I have plenty of these, but I was in the Bellagio and my trafficker would force me to go sit at a bar. And I had to sit at the bar, and the guy, you know, next to me was talking to me, and he leaned over and said to me, "Hey, can we negotiate a price in the room?" And so I said, you know, okay. And so we started going, you know, walking towards the elevator to the hotel where you go up to the hotel rooms within the Bellagio. And he turned to me and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a good night for you. I'm Vice." And he took out his badge. Then he took me to the back. It was a big like conference room with a big conference table. And when we walked in the room, there were other police in there waiting, and the entire table was full of girls just like me. And so they came in, they were mocking us, they were making fun of us, they were asking us how much money was daddy making tonight, talking about our traffickers. And then they took us all in the back of a van to Clark County, where they put us in a holding cell together. They booked us in, would put us in a holding cell together. And then we sat there for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, they let us go out the back door down by Fremont Street, where all of our traffickers were parked along the curb waiting for us to get out of jail, where they would just pick me up. My trafficker picked me up, took me home. I took a shower, and he made me go back out into I had to start at the Treasure Island that day during the day to make up for the money that I didn't make the night before. And when I was sitting in the room at the Bellagio and we were around the table, I remember asking one of the police officers, "How did you know?" And he said to me, "Oh, because I haven't seen you before. We know all the girls that walk through these casinos." So I was 86th from every casino that was owned by the MGM, and I was charged with solicitation. I have many examples like that. The first night that I don't want to take up too much time, so let me know if I need to stop. But I have another pretty good example as well, if I can share.
Please continue.
Okay, yeah. So the very first night I had to be trafficked, I had no idea what was going on. And of course, growing up in Carson, we know that, oh, the brothels are out there, there's prostitution, but it was really disconnected for me, just coming from a middle to upper class family. And so he told me, "No, tonight you're going to have to go to the Treasure Island. You're going to go on the escalator. At the bottom of the escalator, there's a bar, and you're going to sit at the bar. And the first man that talks to you, you're going to tell them you want to negotiate a price in the room." And I was shocked, but I remember thinking, "Oh, this isn't how this works. I grew up in casinos. This isn't happening in the casinos." So honestly, I was like, "Okay, I'll do this tonight because I have to. I have no other choice, but I'll never do this again." I had absolutely no idea what was about to happen in my life. So I did exactly what he said. I got on the escalator, I sat at the bar, and immediately someone came and sat next to me and started talking. I told him, we got to negotiate a price in the room. So we get on the elevator, we go up to where I thought his hotel room was. We get off the elevator, we're walking down the hallway where all the rooms are, and he turns to and looks at me and pulls out his security badge. He's hotel security. So he looks at me and he says, "Hey, I got to take you down and book you and all of these things." And I'm about to cry. Like, I wanted to hug this man. "Oh my gosh, you saved me." Just like, I didn't know. The trauma of the moment is indescribable. And we go down to the basement of the Treasure Island, and he takes my picture and he asks me for all my information. And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. He's going to save me. I'm going to be okay." And he tells me, "Well, now you're 86 from this casino for solicitation. I'm not going to arrest you tonight. I'll let you go." He kicked me out the back door of the casino where my trafficker was sitting, and he picked me up and took me next door to the Mirage Casino. And so there was, through the year and 3 months that I was trafficked in Las Vegas, all of the girls every single girl in that casino was a victim of trafficking. And this is one of the hardest things to explain to people in the state of Nevada, is that and if you would have asked me back then, I would have said, "I have an abusive boyfriend that's making me be a prostitute," because I didn't understand how trafficking works, and I didn't have the language to be able to say, "Hey, excuse me, I'm a victim of human trafficking." And so it's really important that we understand this line is gray in between. And every single one of the girls that were victims that were working, quote unquote, in prostitution in the casinos or on the streets in Las Vegas Boulevard, we were being looked for by Vice and the police and undercover police officers, not the buyers. Not the buyers. And I loved what the previous man said, that they are the easiest to identify. Their money is funding not only sex trafficking, but a myriad of other crimes and organized crime, drug crime. I mean, the people that are selling women are not good people. They're not turning around and doing anything good with the money that buyers are funding. And the idea that they're just these innocent tourists is the most frustrating part of this, because every tourist knew what they were engaging in was illegal. Every single one of them. Not one of them. They might get arrested or tell the police, when they get a citation, "Oh, I didn't know. I thought prostitution was legal in Nevada." They're lying. Every single one of them knew. And so it's important that we go after this crime at the source, and that's the demand.
Thank you so much for that additional context. We are going to start with member questions, and so members will throw out the question, and of course, Vice Chair can also kind of manage who of the panel is going to respond. So any of the four of you can respond to any of the questions. Our first question is from Assembly Member LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this important bill, and Ms. Rangel for sharing your story. In your comments, I think that Ms. Comas mentioned that if the buyers thought they were going to be publicly shamed or people would know, they'd be less likely to engage in this behavior. And so I just wondered if you could just explain how this bill helps lead to more public awareness or people being more aware of what these Johns are doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Assemblymember LaRue Hatch.
Please go direct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So as we were stating, the current law requires us the citation. So therefore, there is no reporting, as Mr. League was sharing, there's no reporting of this crime. So by having that mandatory arrest, then that record will follow that individual. And so that arrest is what enables, then you can see reports of sting operations, et cetera, in the newspaper. And so that's that fear that these buyers have, that their community, their family, their jobs are going to know what activities they're transpiring, and that's why that arrest component is so key.
Thank you. And to confirm then, if an officer believes they're engaging in this action, then they shall arrest, right? It's not a discretion. They have to arrest them. Is that correct?
Assemblymember LaRue Hatch, Reagan Comas for the record. Yes, that's how this is drafted, correct.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. My question is actually in regards to, and thank you so much, Christina, for sharing your story. I think something that really stood out to me in that is the arrest of our victims in these scenarios. And so I'm wondering, with this bill, do we have the numbers on the amount or number of sex workers who have been arrested in these stings versus Johns? And then do we have that nexus on if that's going to reduce the amount of arrests of sex workers?
Elaine Marzola for the record. Thank you for the question, Assembly Member. I don't have those numbers on me, but we will make sure to provide it to the committee. And I'm not sure if anyone coming up to support or oppose or on neutral, if they may have those numbers. But if not, we will make sure to get it to the committee.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing your story and the presentation. I was wondering, I guess I was really just shocked when you talked about the fee that they pay, $400. Do you know the history of why this was set so low, or why they have to pay just $400 and they don't have to do anything else?
Elaine Marzola for the record. I don't know that history. We can provide you with that information, but I always say the citations that these Johns are getting might as well be like a parking ticket or a speeding ticket, right? I pay, it gets dropped, or it gets reduced, or it gets dismissed, and you don't even know what happens. And so, but I will get that information from you.
Tyson League for the record. I just want to share. So it's not that this is always just $400, but what this does is it puts in people's minds that haven't even engaged in this behavior yet that I will be arrested if I am caught doing this. That's the difference. So are there police officers out there arresting people for this crime? There are. Are there people out there facing more significant penalties for this crime? There are. This doesn't give them discretion. This works as deterrence because the people that may engage in the purchase know for a fact this is the absolute minimum that will happen to me now. So it's very effective in terms of deterrence in that manner to make these changes.
I would like to follow up on the questioning of the cost of the fees and how the bill attempts to increase that. I'm sure there's multiple reasons why a person wouldn't go to a brothel that is legal. I'm sure there's many reasons why they choose not to. One of the reasons I suspect is it's my understanding that the brothels are quite expensive. They're not as, they just cost more money. And if we could have staff, because I don't want members looking up on their laptops, but if we could have staff, seriously, find some of those costs for us, if we could research that, what some of the cost would be at a brothel where you could go legally. Again, I know there's many reasons why someone may not choose a brothel, but just in terms of the cost of these fines and fees, I would, because even $800 doesn't seem that expensive, doesn't seem that high. The average person can still, put $800 on their credit card, as opposed to what I understand the cost of the brothel may be. So could you tell us, and I don't even know if there's a question there, or if there's even an answer there of why, but I would really like to see it in comparison to, had you gone to a brothel where you could legally request certain things, what the difference in costs would be there. And if anyone would like to respond to that. If there is a response, if not, that's fine as well.
Elaine Marzola, for the record, I don't have those prices for you, but I will make sure to research it even while we are waiting and people are testifying.
And Madam Chair, Reagan Comas for the record. I believe all of the individuals working at the brothel are all independent contractors, so they negotiate those prices themselves. So I don't know if there's an average rate sheet that you would necessarily follow, Madam Chair, as they're all independent contractors, but there probably is some sort of average that you could find. We just don't have that for you here today.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Our next question will be from Assemblymember Nadeem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. And listening to Christina, what worries me most is that, Christina, I was here listening to your story, and it seems like there are more people, more agencies helping those people, Johns or something like that. Is that going on? Is there some more agencies or some people, like you said, the security people took you over there, and then you had a back door that you had to go, and you were and you met your, the person who paid for sex trafficking. So is that, it looks like there are agencies in Nevada, in Las Vegas, there are more people that are helping that? If you can understand the
person
question.
that was waiting outside to pick me up was
Right.
not the sex. The person waiting outside was my trafficker. So the person that was forcing me to work in prostitution. So he was the one that would be waiting outside the jail or waiting outside the back of the casino when
Okay.
we would get,
Okay.
taken by security. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clear it. Thank you.
Of course, no problem.
Thank you for that. Members, any additional questions? Okay, I don't see any additional questions at this moment, so I will go ahead and open it up for testimony. We will begin here in Carson City. Again, anyone testifying in support of Assembly Bill 299, we ask that you come forward. Please state your name and spell it for the record. And please keep your comments to 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Noble, Jennifer here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association in support of Assembly Bill 299. We'd like to thank the Vice Chair for addressing this important issue of demand in sex trafficking. Thank you.
Anyone else here in Carson City? And again, feel free to fill the chairs up and just rotate yourselves out.
Brenda Sandquist, Executive Director of Exquisite here in Carson City. I am 100% in favor of this bill.
Thank you. And would you mind spelling your name, please?
Yes, Brenda Sandquist, Sandquist. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here in Carson? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone there in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 299? Not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, will you open the lines, please?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now.
Good morning. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the State Vice President of Nevada Families for Freedom. And we as a state need to protect our citizens, and this includes prostitutes and people who are sex trafficked. Higher penalties for the buyers, not the victims. Money and arrests seem to be a good place to start. I agree that $800 does not seem to be high enough. Please pass AB 299. We are in need of the protections for our people, especially the vulnerable. Thank you.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Then I will open it up for testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 299. First here in Carson City.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the Assembly Judiciary. Paloma Guerrero, Paloma Guerrero, Clark County Public Defender's Office. Research in the lived experiences of sex workers teaches us that increasing criminal penalties for sex work-related offenses escalates the violence for all people in the sex industry, especially victims of sex trafficking. People enter the sex trade for a variety of reasons. Some are coerced to trade sex, some trade sex because it's their best and only option to earn a living, and others work freely and by choice. Increasing criminal penalties does not prevent or minimize human trafficking. Additionally, the negative effects of criminalization fall disproportionately on women, people of color, transgender and non-binary workers, people with disabilities, and economically marginalized community members. Evidence-based research conclusively shows that further criminalizing the sale of sex, both the buying and selling, makes circumstances more dangerous and self-perpetuating for victims of human trafficking and sex workers. We understand this argument may feel counterintuitive. However, legislation increasing criminal penalties will increase the harm this bill seeks to mitigate. From looking at other countries and jurisdictions where this approach has been implemented, where it has been tried, we know raising criminal penalties on buyers and repressive policing corresponds with an increase in human trafficking, increase in violence, and a decrease in the health and safety of both victims and workers. Raising criminal penalties on buyers discourages buyers and other sex workers from cooperating with law enforcement to report and prosecute human trafficking. Raising criminal penalties does not lead to a decrease in the number of buyers, workers, or victims selling sex. In fact, these numbers increase. Research finds that deterrence does not reduce the demand for sex and may encourage a riskier client profile. Evidence is so clear that increasing penalties is harmful to those in prostitution and victims of sex trafficking that 250 scientists wrote an open letter urging policymakers to move toward decriminalizing sex work. The idea here is that by going after Johns, it's going to decrease the demand, that it's going to make them think twice. But other countries and jurisdictions have tried it. They've done that. And what research shows is that the demand does not stop. It just drives
Thank you so
sex
much. Your
work
time is
underground.
up.
Thank you.
Good morning, Angela Knott from the Washoe County Public Defender's Office, ANGELA-KNOTT. Arrest for soliciting is already happening. Law enforcement can arrest if they are witness to the crime or if they get a warrant. Warrants are important. A judge can review the evidence and they make the decision on whether there is enough to go and arrest that person, to deprive them of their liberty. The warrantless arrests that this bill seeks to do for soliciting will just be based on probable cause by the officer. When we arrest someone as a tenet of our Constitution, we want that bar for arrest, that bar to deprive someone of their liberty, to be high. Probable cause is a very low standard. This will lead to people being arrested based on rumors. People are always surprised to hear what little evidence is needed to make an arrest. People want to think probable cause is not just one person saying they saw something happen, but there also needs to be video surveillance or DNA. But that's just not the case. A warrantless arrest based purely on probable cause can be as simple as me calling law enforcement, telling them that I saw Assembly Member Jane Doe at Jimmy G's last night soliciting a sex worker. That is it. The cop must now arrest Jane Doe. Now imagine this arrest occurs during an election period, based purely on a lie. You cannot take back that arrest. The consequences of an arrest, even if it doesn't lead to a conviction, can have catastrophic effects. That's why, as a country, we have said there needs to be some bar to overcome. The Fourth Amendment, as a principle, states that warrantless searches are presumptively unreasonable. Another concern with AB 299 is the language of shall. Shall means mandatory arrest. The cop must act, no discretion. This language is different from the other exceptions provided in NRS 171.124, which may allow a warrantless arrest. This includes the TPO violations. Police officers may arrest, not shall. Raising the fines is not the issue. We have an issue with the mechanism of the arrest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here in Carson City? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone there in Las Vegas? Not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, will you open the lines? And I understand that there were people that were trying to call in support, but weren't able to get through, and it made a little sense because it seemed like you heard people trying to click in. So we will just be flexible with the opposition or support testimony based on the callers we receive. So with that, please open the lines.
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 037, you are unmuted and may begin.
Tanya Brown, TONJA-BROWN, advocates for the inmates and the innocent. We are in opposition of AB 299. We did all the previous comments made. Thank you. And good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to call in today. My name is Lauren Boytel, LAUREN BOITEL, and I'm the co-founder of the Nevada Policy Council on Human Trafficking, calling to indicate our strong support of AB 299. Human trafficking persists because there is a market for purchased sex. Buyers create the demand that fuels exploitation, and the most effective way to combat trafficking is to target that demand. AB 299 takes a critical step forward by increasing penalties and fines on buyers, making it clear that Nevada will not tolerate the exploitation of our most vulnerable. By strengthening enforcement and deterrence, this bill helps disrupt the cycle of trafficking and protects those at risk. Our mission is to advocate for just and equitable policy solutions that improve anti-trafficking efforts and support survivors. AB 299 aligns with that mission by reinforcing accountability and serving as a meaningful intervention opportunity. On behalf of the Policy Council, I urge you to support AB 299 and appreciate your commitment to fighting human trafficking in our state. And thank you, Vice Chair Marzola, for your continued leadership on this critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Callers, if you've recently joined and would like to testify in support or opposition to Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 556, please press star 6 to unmute your phone. You may begin.
Anne Marie Grant advocates for the inmates and the innocent, ANNEMARIEGRANT, calling in opposition and echo the other callers' oppositions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
Chair, there are no other callers in the queue wishing to testify at this time.
With that, we will move to neutral testimony. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in neutral.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Joshua Martinez, JOSHUAMARTINEZ, and I represent the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We just want to be we're neutral on this bill right now, and we're looking forward to continuing to work on it. We're here to, protect and serve the community, and we want to work on these issues that are of concern to us all. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here in Carson City? Anyone there in Las Vegas that would like to testify in neutral? Not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, will you open the lines?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now to raise your hand and take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 299, please press star 9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits, 929. You may begin.
Hi, is it too late for me to testify in opposition to 299?
No, we'll go ahead and take your opposition testimony.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. My name is Amy Marie Merrill. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the co-executive director at the Cupcake Girls, an anti-trafficking organization here in Nevada, as well as in 38 states nationwide. I'm writing to express my strong opposition to Assembly Bill 299. While I understand the intent behind the bill, its approach will have devastating unintended consequences, ultimately making trafficking survivors and sex workers less safe and more vulnerable to exploitation. 299 seeks to impose harsher penalties on the clients of sex workers, but in practice, laws like this push consensual sex work further underground. It leads to several dangerous outcomes: increase in risk and violence. When sex work is forced deeper into the shadows, sex workers lose access to safer, more reliable clients. Instead, they're left with riskier, more exploitive individuals, leading to heightened dangers, including violence and trafficking. The other issue is arresting the wrong people. The clients most likely to get caught under these laws are not the exploiters or abusers, but rather those who might otherwise be following harm reduction practices. The truly dangerous individuals will continue to evade detection, making the work riskier for everyone. The other issue is blocking access to resources. Criminalizing clients makes it harder for outreach organizations like ourselves to connect with sex workers. When clients are forced into secrecy, sex workers lose the ability to scream for safety, access to health services, or reach out for support when needed. And then the other one, and the most important one to us, undermining exit strategies. For those seeking to transition out of sex work, criminalizing clients makes it exponentially harder. Fewer financial resources, fewer connections to support systems, greater legal risks create a cycle that makes the industry nearly impossible to leave. Criminalizing clients, it does not reduce demand. It only makes the industry far more dangerous and harder to regulate. If the goal is truly to reduce harm, resources should be directed towards expanding legal protections, harm reduction strategies, and access to supportive services rather than enacting policies that exacerbate the risk. For these reasons, we strongly urge you to oppose AB 299 and instead support measures that prioritize the safety, dignity, and well-being of all people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Then I will go ahead and close testimony on the bill and welcome back the bill presenters for some final comments.
Thank you, Chair Elaine Marzola, for the record. Before we get to the conclusion, if I can just talk about some numbers that were provided to me. So it seems like in the brothels, it says she generally does not have intercourse with a client for less than $1,000. And if the interactions are lengthier and you maybe have an overnight stay, the girlfriend experience, then it's even more expensive. And we're talking about $1,000 an hour, not $1,000 for longer. So that's where we are. So looking at those prices and then looking at the fines, there's quite a discrepancy. The fact that this bill mandates arrest for soliciting prostitution underscores the ongoing challenges law enforcement faces in addressing these issues. Existing laws, while on the books, have not been sufficient to deter this activity, leading to the need for stronger enforcement mechanisms. Thank you so much for you, Chair, and the committee members for listening to this bill this morning, and I urge your support.
Thank you so much. We have one final addition from our legal, Ms. Okrent.
Carly Okrent for the record. I just wanted to note for committee members that NRS 171.137 requires a law enforcement officer to arrest certain persons suspected of committing DV battery.
Thank you so much. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 299. Next, I will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 329. This is a bill that revises provisions relating to victims of crime. We will give the Assembly member a few moments to get settled. And then, same thing, please introduce yourself and your co-presenters. Please remember to say your name and spell it for the record and try to state it before each time you speak. And with that, whenever you're ready, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. My name is Assemblymember Erica Roth, E-R-I-C-A-R-O-T-H, and I'm proud to represent Assembly District 24 in Washoe County. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to present AB 329, a bill that revises provisions concerning the Fund for the Compensation of Victims of Crime. Joining me today is Tyler Winkler, Supervising Attorney at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada's Resiliency and Justice Center, and Serena Evans with the Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Briefly, established in 1969, the Nevada Victims of Crime program plays a crucial role in providing financial assistance to individuals who have suffered physical, emotional, or financial harm because of crime. The program helps to compensate victims for crime-related expenses, such as medical costs, mental health counseling, funeral and burial costs, and lost wages. To receive compensation, victims must apply within the state's mandated time requirements and report to law enforcement. However, the strict time requirement and mandate that victims share some of their most traumatic moments with law enforcement creates a barrier to accessing this essential fund for victims who do not feel safe or ready to seek help from law enforcement or otherwise struggle to navigate the often complex legal system. AB 329 builds on the important work of the VOCP by making the compensation process more accessible and equitable for victims in Nevada. The changes proposed in this bill will ensure that victims have the time and opportunity to apply for the assistance they need to rebuild their lives. I'll now pass it over to Serena Evans.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Serena Evans, Serena Evans, and I am the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. As a statewide domestic and sexual violence coalition representing 14 program members from every corner of the state, we advocate for trauma-informed and victim-centered policies that will increase the resources and support for victim survivors. AB 329 is a crucial step forward, offering common sense legislation that will reduce unnecessary barriers and improve our state's victim compensation program. The aftermath of an assault or an act of violence is unique and deeply personal to each victim survivor. While some may find comfort in contacting and engaging with law enforcement, others may turn to different avenues, like a victim advocate, a member of their church, or their therapist. In fact, domestic violence goes unreported to law enforcement roughly 30% of the time, and sexual assault goes unreported 63% of the time. In 2023, law enforcement recorded 28,698 domestic violence reports, yet NCE DSV's program members served 33,165 survivors. This discrepancy highlights the many survivors who may never engage with law enforcement but still need critical support. The Victim Compensation Program can help play a critical role in safety and healing, yet when survivors of violence reach for those support programs, they are often met with bureaucratic red tape that is hard to navigate in the aftermath of trauma, and their applications are denied due to not meeting the requirements and timelines. There is no one right way to heal from violence, and having the bravery to come forward and seek support in whatever way feels the most safe and supportive should not be penalized. And we as a state should not deem victims who are comfortable engaging with law enforcement as more deserving victims. AB 329 sends a clear message. We trust survivors to make the choices that best support their healing. By expanding the types of documentation allowed and extending the eligibility period for compensation, this bill respects survivors' autonomy and ensures they are supported during their most vulnerable times.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tyler Winkler, and I am the supervising attorney at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada's Resiliency and Justice Center, formerly known as the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center. At the Resiliency Center, I work with a multidisciplinary team to advocate for victims of crime, ensuring they receive the resources and support they need. A major part of my role is helping victims navigate Nevada's Victim Compensation Program, which provides financial assistance for things like medical and mental health care, relocation to safety, lost wages, funeral and burial expenses for families who have lost loved ones. And despite these critical benefits, victim compensation is severely underutilized, in part due to bureaucratic hurdles that prevent eligible victims from accessing the help they need. This bill removes those barriers. Currently, victims must file a police report within 5 days and cooperate with law enforcement to qualify for compensation. This disqualifies many victims who, for valid reasons, don't report their victimization. Research has consistently shown that more than half of victimizations go unreported, and the reasons are varied, including fear of retaliation, distrust of the justice system, shame or trauma, or lack of awareness they could get help if they reported to police first. And the result, even though these victims need help, they are denied assistance because of a procedural issue. For example, my client James. In June 2021, James was the victim of a violent crime. He spent almost a year in a coma and rehab recovering. James didn't know about victim compensation or other resources to assist him, and he didn't reach the Resiliency Center until fall of 2023, 2 years later. We could easily access his substantial medical records and EMS reports proving what had happened to him, but because he never filed a police report, he's ineligible for compensation. And James's story doesn't make sense. The purpose of victim compensation is to help victims recover, not make them jump through hoops. More importantly, these requirements don't benefit victims or the broader community. Studies show that when victims receive support for basic needs and mental health, they are more likely to heal, more likely to feel safe, and importantly, more likely to cooperate with law enforcement. It does not make sense to create a barrier to recovery by forcing a police report and cooperation before helping them. For example, survivors of sex trafficking are commonly historically treated as offenders instead of the victims that they are. Compounding this issue, many underage victims have run away from abusive homes or other dangerous situations and unknowingly into the arms of a trafficker. This situation leaves them with one of three choices: return to the original abuse, remain with the current abuser, or self-report to a system they already don't trust and that criminalizes their victimization. This bill ensures that they don't have to choose between getting help and protecting themselves. The Resiliency Center has a dedicated staff attorney who serves survivors of human trafficking. Many of our clients are resistant to reporting their trafficker and are often openly hostile to cooperating with law enforcement. However, when a survivor works with us to access community resources and legal help, we have an opportunity to begin healing their trauma. A crucial part of that healing is undoing the destructive narrative that their trafficker has ingrained in them, that law enforcement is the enemy. By providing supportive services first, without demanding that cooperation up front, we create a safe environment where survivors feel protected. Time and again, once our clients see that they have support and an attorney in their corner, they voluntarily choose to assist in a criminal prosecution. But this takes time. Not every survivor has a trauma-informed attorney to guide them through the process. So encouraging the removal of these unnecessary barriers will support these efforts and ultimately increase cooperation with law enforcement. Now, walking through AB 329 and incorporating the conceptual amendment that was uploaded to Nellis. This bill modernizes and improves Nevada's victim compensation system, and it does this by increasing the time to apply for compensation, allowing victims to prove eligibility in multiple ways, not just with a police report, expands protections for minor victims, and ensures that choosing not to engage with law enforcement doesn't stop someone from getting help. So section by section. Section 1 amends NRS 217.100, and under subsection 1 it amends and takes away language to make it so that the filing deadline to apply is extended. Victims now have 60 months or 5 years to apply for compensation instead of just 24 months. And it removes the language of a strict police report requirement. Victims no longer need to file a police report within 5 days to qualify for compensation. Subsection 6 goes through the ways that someone can prove their eligibility. Sorry, I apologize, subsection 4. Subsection 4. The current law lacks other ways to prove eligibility beyond the police report. So the change now will be victims can submit various types of evidence, medical or mental health records, police reports if they're available but it's not required, protection orders, court transcripts, government records, records from victim service providers, affidavits from qualified professionals, and other documentary evidence deemed sufficient by the Director of Health and Human Services. Subsection 5, current law, it states that minors who are sexually abused or involved in pornography can apply to victim compensation until they reach the age of 21. The change here is that all minor victims can now apply until age 26. Or another way of thinking of it, it's that 60 months timeline starts once they hit 21. And then again, we put in a waiver provision for a good cause. And subsection 6, this defines who counts as a qualified third party. So this would be doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed social workers, registered psychiatric nurses, marriage and family therapists, clinical counselors, victim advocates with training, clergy members, and this expands the pool of credible sources who can verify a victim's experience, making the process more accessible. Section 2 amends NRS 217.220, and it removes subsection 1C, the strict cooperation with law enforcement requirement. Victims can now receive compensation even if they do not participate in a criminal investigation. That's the changes in the bill, and I'll turn it back to Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, I think we're ready to turn it over for questions.
Thank you so much. I have a brief question. So, let me see, where is this? Under subsection 6, when you listed out the qualified third party, you talked about physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, all of those different professions, as well as a victim advocate and members of religious or faith-based communities. Would you, would a teacher or an educator be able to advocate as well? Because we know that often, not only are they trained professionals when it comes to identifying and assisting victims, but often they're the ones that many victims see the most, and also one of the #1 reporters. So if you could respond to that verbally, not just non-verbally.
I'll let Mr. Winkler speak on this as well, since he does this in practice. I think the language here was really to bring this in line with the Federal Victims of Crime Act, but that doesn't mean that Nevada can't do better. So I think that is, a really insightful suggestion.
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair Miller. Tyler Winkler for the record. And how it was also written was that this should be just a list of examples, and the director could also add to that as it makes sense, because teachers, that definitely makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you so much, because we just obviously want as many people advocating and supporting as possible. With that, I will go ahead and open it up for questions. The first question will be from Assemblywoman Nadeem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is just for my understanding. So the state already has a program for the victim, and it's just, this bill is just expanding that program?
Erica Roth for the record. Thank you for that question. Through you, Chair, to Assembly Member Nadeem.
Please go direct.
Thank you. That's correct. At this point, victims are entitled to compensation, but the burdens on getting that compensation is very onerous. So this just simply expands what can be used as proof to actually access that compensation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was formulating a question in my head, but instead I'm going to move to Assembly Member Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for this bill. And I agree, sometimes I appreciate extending the time, because as you mentioned, victims, it could take them a long time to even come to terms with what's going on, and then to get all this together and seek the help they need. So I just wanted to clarify, because you mentioned it puts us in line with the federal law for this victims fund. So to the federal law, that doesn't require, the only document is a police report that can be submitted?
Tyler Winkler for the record. Thank you for that question. So the Victims of Crime Act, no, there's no requirement for a police report or even cooperating with law enforcement. The federal statute, it says that state programs should work to promote cooperation with law enforcement, and then it also has a bunch of wellness exceptions. But again, that's a requirement for the state program. It's not a requirement for any of the applicants applying for the program.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your presentation. Under the examples, I believe it's E, a record of a governmental entity, and I was just wondering, what would an example of that be?
Tyler Winkler for the record. Thank you for that question. So again, there would still have to be verifiable evidence standards that are developed within the state program. The statute was, to give an idea of the kinds of things that would be helpful to determine eligibility. So say there's not like an official police report, but there are other types of information that could create a timeline for you. So, if they tried to make a call to law enforcement, or if there were lots of different things, just not really, the idea is to not exclude someone who can demonstrate their eligibility through other verifiable means. That answers.
Would you like a follow-up, Assembly Member?
Sorry, I'm just still not clear on the governmental entity. So is that like if I'm at the DMV and I tell like the teller, or like, I guess I'm just wondering what is defined in the governmental entity on Section E in the amendment?
Erica Roth for the record. I'll jump in on this one. I think the first thing that comes to my mind just in my own practice would be somebody seeking possibly a protective order, and maybe they don't ultimately go through with that, but there is some court documentation or some documentation of that. And I think what the language really does when you look at I is any other documentary evidence deemed sufficient by the director is to just really capture, that we are not just looking at police reports, but any documentation that the director would deem appropriate for creating a timeline and some sort of proof. But that's an example. That's the first example that came to my mind.
Our next question is from Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for bringing this and trying to make sure I understand it correctly. When we talk about the qualified third party, and we know a lot of those are mandatory reporters, I just want to make sure I understand the process right. Fortunately, I've not ever been in this kind of a situation. You're seeing a therapist, maybe a nurse. You don't want to press charges, but as a mandatory reporter, that person has to file or make some sort of notification, or no?
Serena Evans for the record. Thanks for that question. So domestic violence is not a mandatory. If somebody is a mandatory reporter, they do not have to file a police report for disclosed domestic violence, unless that person is a child, then it's totally different. But so if me as a grown adult, I'm going to my therapist, I'm experiencing domestic violence, my therapist is not required to report that. But if, through my healing journey, we discover, the Victims of Crime Compensation Program, I can then go apply for it. And my therapist, being a qualified third party, can submit an affidavit saying, yes, Serena in my office has discussed her victimization of domestic violence. I am here, testifying that they have experienced domestic violence. So it's not that the qualified third party is submitting a police report on behalf of the victim. It's that they are submitting their truth and their oath through an affidavit that that person has disclosed as domestic violence to them, or any violence. I'm just using domestic violence as an example.
Thank you. That really helps to clarify. When I thought about mandatory reporting, just for children, not for adults, even though it's such a serious thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblymember Cole.
Good morning. Thank you for this. So I know with an affidavit, there's probably going to be a statement that says, under penalty of perjury or something. I'm not sure if there's maybe in the process that the director uses, there's some other mechanism that they use to make sure that people are submitting truthful and verifiable documents. But that's one question. And a secondary question having to do sort of in the same area is when you talk about the physician and the psychiatrist and the psychologist and social worker licensed to practice in this state, I know many of us have been in committees where we're talking about compacts. So I don't know if you want to maybe massage that language so that it pulls in anybody that's licensed here through a compact.
Erica Roth for the record. Thank you for that question. Yes, it does require an affidavit is under oath under penalty of perjury, and so there are already mechanisms put in place to ensure that people aren't misusing the system. I don't have these numbers, and I'm sure Mr. Winkler can speak to this more, but this is really about staying outside of the legal system per se, so that victims can just access the care that they need to heal. We know that this is an evidence-based way that we can really support victims of crime, victims of sex trafficking. But yes, I think that there is a mechanism already in place to ensure that proof is provided under oath and is verifiable.
Our next question is from Assemblymember Urick.
Thank you, Chair. I also appreciate this bill and the intent of trying to help victims. I think that some of the challenges we have is a very heavy focus on suspects and folks that are engaged in perpetuating crimes against people. So I really like this. My question is, and its ultimate is, do you have a concern with, is I'm assuming there are limited resources that are available through VOCA funds and these sorts of resources that we'll try to direct to these folks. It was very narrowly tailored before. It was set this 2-year kind of window. Is there any concern at all that by expanding this out to now pretty much any victim, expanding it out to a much greater time period to even apply for these funds, that we might deplete these too quickly and then thereby miss what previously I can see on the statute was to direct the resources, limited though they were, to victims of sex trafficking? Can you just address that and see if that's a concern that we should be mindful of?
Tyler Winkler for the record, and thank you very much for the question. So victim compensation through VOCA is kind of a unique program. The funding for it primarily comes all from the federal government, about 75%. And the way it's set up is that they increase the payment based on whatever the state paid in the last fiscal year. So if there is an increase in paid claims, then the federal government's going to pay more the next federal go-around. The other part of that, too, is states that have implemented making it more accessible for folks to apply, they haven't seen major increases in applications and the actual number, because unfortunately there's still barriers that exist to requesting victim compensation. This is just removing the easy targets that we can get out of the way for folks. I hope that answers the question.
I think it did, and if I could summarize what I think you said is that increased demand here locally next year would be met with an increase in supply of these funds from the federal government?
Tyler Winkler for the record, yes, that is correct.
And Erica Roth for the record, if I could just follow up, just for a clarity purpose. Also, the states that we have seen more, relaxed requirements around reporting, there's not a depletion of those funds. What we're seeing is that it's about the same amount of applicants. More applications are being approved, right? But there hasn't been a flood of new applications, so we're seeing about the same numbers.
Thank you so much for that. We have a question from Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, for the second question. And this is a great time for this. I was wondering if maybe you could just tell us how the fund actually works, like a victim gets money from it. Is there a limit to how much they can receive, or is it certain expenses that they're allowed to recover from the fund? So just maybe some more technical of how it actually works in practice, what they're allowed to receive.
Tyler Winkler for the record, and I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. But yes, there are categorical limits based by the state program. So the maximum amount that on any one claim is $35,000, but that would be for medical. So 35 maximum amount for the claim. That could be all medical stuff, and then there are separate categories for different things. So like funeral expenses is capped at $5,000. The relocation benefit is capped at $2,500. And these are all reimbursable. So it's not like you get approved and then they give you a check. You have to show that this is the expense that you did have to pay, or you did already pay and you get reimbursed for it. Did I hit all the questions there?
Yeah, that was perfect, just so we have an idea of, they're not just submitting everything they've spent, but like you said, medical, if they have to move, those types of things. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And so with that, it seems like there's a panel or someone making decisions on what would be approved, what wouldn't, and of course, the amounts of what would be approved for each instance. With that, could you just tell us, if you briefly or on average know, how long does it typically take a recipient to receive, it may be separate, the approval and or the funds?
Tyler Winkler for the record. Thank you very much for that question. So when an application has everything it needs, which at the moment is a police report and expenses, it's very fast. I've seen the compensation program, within a week, and then if they got it in by the time they cut checks, then the person's going to get it the following week. But when they're waiting for something like a police report, it's, who knows? It could take a really long time. If there's an active investigation or something, they can't get the police report. There's all kinds of different holdups. So this would get rid of that barrier to speed that up.
Thank you so much. With that, not seeing any additional questions, I will go ahead and open it up for testimony. So anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 329, please come forward. Please remember to state your name and spell it so we have it correct on the record. And please keep your comments to 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, Jennifer Noble, Jennifernoble, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, testifying today in support of Assembly Bill 329, and we would like to thank Assemblymember Roth for bringing this bill.
Paloma Guerrero, PALOMAGUERRERO, Clark County Public Defender's Office. Ditto, we support this bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jason Woodard, JASON WOODARD, Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs. We also support this bill. Thank you.
Angela Knott, Washoe County Public Defender's Office, ANGELA KNOTT. We support this bill.
Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City, is there anyone there in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of AB 329?
Good morning, Chair Miller and distinguished members of the committee. Robert Gibson in support of AB 329, ROBERT, GIP as in Paul, SON. I'm a litigation fellow with Giffords, the gun safety organization founded by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. I focus on victim services and compensation reform throughout the country. I come to this work, however, as a son of Nevada, moved to action after the 1 October shooting. 1 October united our state, and it brought me to the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center, where we serve survivors. In that tradition, Gifford strongly supports AB 329, a bill that would continue innovations made after the shooting by opening alternative ways to report victimization. Current state law requires victims to report and engage with law enforcement for program eligibility, but this doesn't account for the realities of crime. A majority of victims don't report to police for many reasons. Victimization is traumatic. Alongside trauma, survivors are often fearful of victim blaming. They have real concerns regarding retaliation, or they don't trust law enforcement. AB 329 would better account for these realities. Additionally, the public safety benefits of alternative reporting cannot be understated. When victims work with third-party trauma service providers, they're more likely to cooperate with law enforcement, and these alternative reports can help repair survivor distrust. Further, Since most victims don't report to police, alternative reports would provide the state with a more accurate picture of crime. They'd also play an important role in crime prevention, as more accessible compensation can help to stop cycles of violence. Recognizing the priority of survivor well-being, Congress recently changed federal law to clarify that working with law enforcement is not a precondition for compensation. The DOJ has repeatedly stated that programs aren't required to mandate victim police reports and engagement. With that flexibility, leading states have opened alternative ways to report, including Louisiana, Illinois, New York, and Maryland. This bill would therefore continue Nevada's place among the vanguard, all while remaining compliant with federal law. So, to strengthen public safety and ensure our state is victim-centered, Gifford strongly urges the committee to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Not seeing anyone else there in Las Vegas. Broadcasting, will you open the lines?
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 329, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Tanya Brown, DONJABROWN. I'm going in as a private citizen on this one. I am in support of this bill. I do see some things that should have gone up in the neutral part, but I just kind of want to bring it to your attention on an issue that has come to my attention at me as well. I have a friend who has is the victim of domestic violence, and it kind of goes in with the stalking part, but this is not a part of the stalking. He has gone through everything. The issue is that this individual has gone under the domestic violence, has beaten her, so on and so forth, has broken into her home. She has filed TPOs. She's tried to get an extended TPO, but unable to serve. He's had to move out of her home, incur all these extra expenses. So I was just letting you know that how does that affect this? But I am in support of this bill, but I just wanted to bring it to mind that it's an ongoing domestic violence and would just cover each and every time if it's the same individual, and nothing happens to that because they're unable to locate that or arrest the individual. Thank you. But I am in support of AB 329. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. We will take your support testimony. Next caller.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Aswad Thomas. Aswad is spelled ASWAD, last name Thomas, THOMAS. I'm here testifying in support of AB 329. I am the Vice President of the Alliance for Safety and Justice and the National Director of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, a national network over 200,000 crime victims nationwide. Like many of our members, I am a victim of a violent crime. I was shot twice in my back shortly after graduating from college, and those 2 bullets ended my professional basketball career and nearly my life. And like so many victims in Nevada and across the country, it took me years to recover. Law enforcement visited me several times about the case, but they never shared information about victim services or the compensation program. And these experiences brought me to working with Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice and dedicated my life to elevating victims' voices in policy and also working with victim administrators across the country to improve programs. Red tape in statute unnecessarily excludes many victims from accessing financial assistance from the Nevada Victims of Crime program, and many are automatically ineligible due to that requirement to have a police report, even if another form of trusted documentation is readily accessible. Nationally, more than half of violent crimes are not immediately reported to police for various reasons, including the legitimate fear for safety or negative past experiences with law enforcement when victims are struggling through the worst moments of their life. So tying compensation to immediate reporting can deter victims from getting help, undermining their safety goals. But we know when victims get help, they are more likely to feel safe and able to cooperate with law enforcement. And even for victims who report right away, requiring the program to get that police report with other
Sir,
documentation exists can slow
sir,
the
your
program
time
and
is
delay
up.
urgent
Can you
help.
wrap it up? Sir, your time is up.
Yes. So for these reasons, Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice are in strong support of AB 329. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just as a reminder, you are invited to submit any additional comments you have that if you'd like to mail or email that to us. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you have recently joined and would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 329, please press star 9 now. Chair, there are no other callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Then I will open it up for opposition testimony, beginning here in Carson City. Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone there in Las Vegas? Broadcasting, will you open the lines?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 329, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Anne Marie Grant, ANNEMARIEGRANT. My brother Thomas Purdy was murdered by police in 2015 during a mental health crisis. Unfortunately, I have to oppose the bill because I find that the victims of police murder are always excluded from this funding, and that needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
The public line is open and working. There are no other callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Then I will open it up for neutral testimony, beginning here in Carson City.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Marla McDade Williams, I serve as the administrator for the Division of Child and Family Services, which administers this program on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services. MARLAMC, capital DADEWILLIAMS. I just wanted to go on the record with 2 points. One, about the budget. So it is correct what Mr. Winkler said, that the more money we spend at the state level, we can get more from the federal government. The problem is I still have a limited budget when we budget that. So if we do come up against that, I would have to ask for additional funding to be able to draw on the federal funding. As it relates to the caps, we have a state plan that reconciles state law and federal law, and then that state plan guides what the caps are, so they aren't in statute. So we just have to ensure that the state plan is always updated to reflect any of the applicable changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that context. Anyone else here in Carson City? Is there anyone there in Las Vegas? Broadcasting, will you open the line for neutral testimony?
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 329, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Well, then with that, I see the bill sponsor is not coming back to the table for any final comments. So with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 329. Right now, I will open up public comment. Just a reminder that it is not to discuss any of the bills we heard today, but any other issues that are under the purview of this committee. Anyone wishing to make public comment, again, please keep your comments to 2 minutes and please state your name and spell it for the record. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to make public comment? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone there in Las Vegas? Also not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, will you open the lines?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 on your phone now.
Tanya Brown, TONJABRO, ASWN, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. I just want to bring to your attention, just in case you get a bill coming up that deals with the criminal justice discovery, Brady violations, that you would consider what I call Nolan's Law. Nolan's Law is once a defendant is arrested and charged with a crime, the law enforcement agency must provide the accused defense counsel with a copy of the materiality exculpatory evidence at the same time the prosecution receives it. Then it will be left to the court to decide what is or is not admissible for trial. Any additional materiality exculpatory evidence that is provided to the prosecution must be simultaneously provided to the accused and the counsel. And then dealing with Brady violations versus work product, when it is clear that a Brady violation existed, but the court deems that it is a work product. So if any bill that should come up during this legislative session or possibly in 2027, please consider this. We need to help prevent wrongful convictions, and this will definitely do that, help in that area. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Next caller.
If you have recently joined and would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. Then I will go ahead and close public comment. That concludes our work for this morning in this committee, so I will adjourn and see you all back at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.